The Houston Rockets have easily been playing their best basketball since the year 2020 when they departed from NBA legend James Harden. Here we are in the 2024-2025 NBA season, and the Houston Rockets through 24 games have a record of 16-8, and they're sitting in third place in a very talented Western Conference. And the two teams ahead of the Houston Rockets right now are also two really good ball clubs, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Oklahoma City Thunder, but the Houston Rockets, they aren't too many games off of those guys. So with that being said, the Houston Rockets, me watching them and then looking at them statistically, where they rank as a team, statistically where some of their players rank individually, I'm really comfortable with calling the Houston Rockets one of the best teams in the Western Conference, and I'm very confident that they're going to win a playoff series when the Western Conference playoffs begin. That's how much confidence I have in this team. And with me saying that, the Houston Rockets, they may have an opportunity to get even better during this season, not with their player development like we've been seeing this whole year, but they might be able to go out, make a trade, and potentially make the Houston Rockets even better than what we're seeing right now. And NBA insider Shams, he came out and he made it known to the general public that the Miami Heat, they're finally starting to listen to trades for superstar Jimmy Butler. And the reason that this is linked to the Houston Rockets is because when Jimmy Butler named his preferred teams that he would go to, he wants to go to a team that's ready to win now. So he's thinking highly of the Houston Rockets, just like us. And I just wanted to say that to allude to that point of how good the Houston Rockets have become. But he wanted to come. He listed the Houston Rockets, he listed the Dallas Mavericks, and he listed the Golden State Warriors. And the two Texas teams, they play a huge role because he is from Houston, Texas, and then also two really good ball clubs because Jimmy Butler, he is still thirsty for that NBA championship. So as a Rockets fan, as a Rockets player, as the Rockets front office, this could be a lot to take in, because when you have a player of that stature, a player that good, and he becomes available and he said he wants to come to your team, that's not something that happens that often, and it's not something that you take lightly. So I'm sure the Houston Rockets are going over every single possibility right now, weighing the pros and cons. What would happen if we do this? What happens if we don't do this? And I want to do the same thing in today's video, just from a more simple perspective. And the way I'm looking at it, me personally, I'm like right 50-50. I'm like right on the line of the Houston Rockets trying to make this deal, or going to and attempting to make this deal to bring in Jimmy Butler. I will have a couple stipulations, because I love this Houston Rockets team, and we know they're very youthful, and they're players that's getting better with each and every game, and that's something that's super duper fun to watch from a fan's perspective. When you see all these guys get drafted, and then you see how much of beautiful basketball players that they're becoming. But the players, when I look at the Houston Rockets, I think I will make this deal, but I will go to the Miami Heat and I will let them know, like, can we do this without these guys being on the table? I want these guys to be untouchable, and the untouchable in the Houston Rockets for me right now is Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, of course. I think Fred VanVleet should be an untouchable, and I know he's not the youngest of the players on the group, but I think Fred VanVleet. Bro, somebody pointed this out to me that I was pronouncing his last name incorrectly, and I forgot what they told me, how I was pronouncing it incorrectly. But Freddie, he brings a lot to the Houston Rockets that's very valuable, what they need, and without him, they might lack in those areas, and that's just playmaking. He's been really good assisting the ball since he's been a Houston Rocket, and then also his ability to space the floor and knock down three-pointers. That's not something that they've started to specialize in just yet, and so he's a huge part of that floor spacing. And Jimmy Butler, he doesn't take many threes, so that's why I have Fred VanVleet as a I feel like I'm saying his name wrong every time now, but that's why I have him as an untouchable. And then also Jabari Smith Jr., I really like him a lot. I think he has so much potential, and then just off his size alone, and his ability to shoot the 3-point shot, I wouldn't be so quick to trade him this early into his NBA career. And also Amin Thompson and Tari Eason. These are all the guys that would be untouchable for me on the Houston Rockets that I think the Miami Heat would come and ask for. So I know that sounds like, damn, you just listed all their most valuable trade assets, but we've seen in the past, we look at these last couple of blockbuster deals where superstars have been moved via trade. It really hasn't been a superstar for it really hasn't been a superstar for a superstar. We see multiple teams get involved. We see 3-team deals, and we also just see a collection of role players, and we see a collection of draft picks, and then we see the teams move that in order to bring in a superstar. We can look over the last couple of years. Kevin Durant going to the Phoenix Suns from the Brooklyn Nets. Wasn't really no other superstar caliber player at the same level of Kevin Durant involved in that deal. We look at Rudy Gobert when he left Utah and went to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Wasn't really no other superstar players involved in that deal. So it's very possible for the Houston Rockets to get this done without giving up somebody that the Miami Heat is on the same skill level as Jimmy Butler. And you can look at guys like Dillon Brooks, and I love Dillon Brooks a lot. He's actually one of my favorite players. But just to look at it from an unbiased standpoint, if you could take Jimmy Butler, if you could take Dillon Brooks out of the starting lineup and put in Jimmy Butler, I think that makes the Houston Rockets significantly better. But I love Dillon Brooks. My personal opinion of Dillon Brooks, I would love to see him stay on the Houston Rockets. And then also you have Cam Whitmore, and I know Cam Whitmore is very beloved. I see you guys praising him all the time in the comments of these videos, but he is in a situation right now where the Houston Rockets, they don't really need him, and they're not playing him that often. So I think if you could use him to get a player like Jimmy Butler, I think it's definitely something worth looking at. So you have these two guys who are really good basketball players, and I think they could go over to Miami and make an impact for that team, especially Dillon Brooks. I think he would fit in perfectly with Miami. And then Cam Whitmore, he has a lot of potential. And then from there, we let the guys in the front office figure it out from there when it comes to the cap space and when it comes to what draft picks they have to utilize. But that's what I'm thinking. I necessarily wouldn't go to town on this trade if I had to give up any of those guys that are named. And if the Miami Heat were asking for that, it would just have to be one of those guys, but definitely not Alperen Sengun, definitely not Jalen Green, definitely not Tari Eason, not Amin Thompson, and really not Jabari Smith Jr. either. I like all 5 of these guys. I like them so much, and I wouldn't be so upset about the Houston Rockets giving up draft capital, because we look at them right now, their future is really secure. The best players on this team are significantly young. When we look at Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun, Jalen Green, Tari Eason, Amin Thompson, all of these guys are under the age of, I don't think none of them are older than 23. I think Jalen and Alperen might be 23 coming up on 24, but these guys are actually, I think they're the same age as me. I don't think they'll turn 24 into next year. So they are significantly young, and I think they're going to have their future wrapped up for a very long time just off the collection of guys that they have right now. So I think the Houston Rockets, they could make this trade work. They could make it possible to bring Jimmy Butler to Houston while keeping most of their guys intact. So there's that aspect of it. And then we have to evaluate how much better would the Houston Rockets actually be adding a guy like Jimmy Butler. Now, Jimmy has been he's been really special really since he's left the Chicago Bulls, and of course he started to become more offensive oriented towards the later stint of his Chicago stint. And then when we seen him go to Minnesota, we seen him go to Philly, we saw him starting to get better on the offensive side of the ball, and then we saw him get to the Miami Heat, where he started to become a player that can carry a team to the NBA Finals. We saw it in 2020, and we also saw it in 2023. So he does have that experience. He has that ability to be the alpha on the team, to be a leader on the team, and to lead them on to the playoff runs. And we look at who Jimmy Butler is as a basketball player, supremely talented. Offensively, I think he can fit seamlessly in on any team in the NBA because he doesn't really need the basketball in his hands that often. That's just what was required in Miami. But Jimmy Butler is a basketball player. He can move the basketball. He can play without it. Outstanding cutter. Can play in the post. He can excel in just about every aspect on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't think it would be no wrinkles there, and I think it would be good for the Houston Rockets to get an additional player in the half court that can create their own offense and create their own offense and create it for others at an elite level and do it consistently. And then also on the defensive side of the ball, not much that I can say about Jimmy Butler that you guys don't already know. Since he's coming to the NBA, he started off as a defensive specialist player, and then he just worked himself into becoming a better player on the offensive side of the ball. So I think Jimmy Butler, I definitely think he would make the Houston Rockets a lot better. I think that type of trade, if we get a locked in Jimmy Butler, if we get a healthy Jimmy Butler, one thing we got to remember that Jimmy, the last couple of years during the regular season, he hasn't been that available, just dealing with nagging injuries, no type of injuries, but before last year in the playoffs that kept him out for like the entire season, but injuries that keep him out that feels like almost every other game. But so that's something that the Houston Rockets would have to consider as well. I think he's 34, about to be 35. So that's another thing to consider as well. Like for me personally, I'm like 50-50. I wouldn't be mad if the Houston Rockets pulled the trigger on this trade, and I also wouldn't be upset if they didn't pull the trigger on this trade, because like I said, they have some good chemistry going right now, some good synergy going right now. But when you have a player of Jimmy Butler's caliber that becomes available and say he wants to play for your team, I think the Houston Rockets, I think they're smart enough to know that they definitely have to evaluate this and see what is the minimum that we can give up to get Jimmy Butler. So we're going to see. This is going to be really interesting. I think Jimmy Butler going to any of those three teams would be really, really good for the NBA, because the teams that were listed, I think they do desperate. Well, not the Houston Rockets, but the other two teams. Well, not really. I think the Golden State Warriors, they desperately need Jimmy Butler. I think the Dallas Mavericks, I think getting Jimmy will definitely make them better, and the same thing with the Houston Rockets. But for nonetheless, that's what I want to talk about with you guys today. This news just came out not too long ago, so I was like, oh man, let me get on here and talk about this, because we don't usually talk about trade talks and free agency signings. We like to watch the game, and then we like to go over what happened. So, but the Houston Rockets, you guys have become like a really special place for me to talk about on this channel. You guys are always super supportive, so I love getting on here and talking about the Houston Rockets. So you guys let me know what you think down in the comment section, and then if you enjoyed, please subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.